Welcome to Sisterhood Meets Motherhood, the podcast where two goddesses who happen to be related by marriage discuss all things family, purpose, sisterhood, faith, spirituality, and all the other divinely messy parts of womanhood. Every other week, Kendra and Sophie unmask from all the daily roles required of the modern woman to bring you refreshing and truthful conversations that remind you that you are, in fact, never alone on the journey. Here we are, episode 3.
Yay.
Hi.
Hello.
So it's really exciting because since we last met, you were here in Colorado and we actually recorded the first 2 episodes at once. And then you moved to Spain, got settled, and we put it all out there and launched the podcast within the last couple of weeks. And a lot of people listened and a lot of people downloaded the show. So I think it's gone better than we could have even expected.
I agree. And thank you all. And it's makes our hearts full because we feel like we have that community that we want to provide for you all as well. And so, yeah, this will be fun. I wish I was sitting right next to you recording, but we'll get back to, when I'm back in the States recording together. But it's also such a beautiful thing to be able to have technology and be halfway across the world, but still get to connect as sisters, as mothers, and then connect with all of you worldwide as well.
Yeah, it's actually insane, this ability to, I'm looking at the camera that's going to create a video that a lot of people can watch. And I'm looking at you.
Ties right in with our episode today with gratitude of the craziest little things like technology.
Yeah. So today we are talking about gratitude, and we'll definitely get to gratitude, but I want to start with explaining this idea of victim consciousness and victim mentality, because it's actually how we got to gratitude. I texted Kendra and I said, I keep on showing up in the victim. Like I keep on showing up like something's happening to me or something's wrong. And I'm going to share in a moment the theory behind it. But as we were talking about it, and we'll also tell a funny story that happened in the middle of all of it, Kendra said, I've been thinking a lot about gratitude and how that experience brings in so much okayness and contentment to my life, even when hard things are happening and we're in transition and the kids are going through stuff. So we're blending the two, because really the way to get out of the victim mentality is to bring in like what you're grateful for, not like the cliche way, like really a felt sense of, wow, like how can I look around at what's right instead of what's wrong?
Absolutely. And they do tie really well together. And I think everyone listening right now can relate to this. Like if you just open your heart and be honest, because at all times we have moments where we feel in that victim mode. And I thought it was really, it was key, like, and everything works all together. But when you texted me that, and I was thinking, I have this overwhelming feeling of gratitude on my heart the last couple of weeks. And then I was telling Sophie that everything is popping up around that, right? As I have this attitude of gratitude, the universe is like attracting that. So everything in my email and my social media and friends are mentioning things, it's all popping up gratitude. And so we very much wanted to show up in that space and connect it back to victim mentality. And before we do that though, we have to check in with ourselves. And I love this. And Sophie has taught me this. And even before we start podcasts, she helps me do this amazing grounding moment together. And I just want to ask you, Sophie, how are you being in this moment?
How am I being? Well, I got to wake up really early because of the time difference. So it's still dark outside. So I'm coming right out of the dream space, and I'm excited about getting to talk from a clean slate. Like I'm not coming in from all the different parts of my day. So I would say overall good and excited and clear in this moment, which is refreshing.
And even though
How
you just woke up, you look like you've been awake and
I
fresh and
kind of
beautiful.
I was kind of like putting on the show with myself. I was like, I'm like an early morning newscaster. I'm like getting up when it's still dark. It was kind of fun.
Thankful for the lights, even when it's
Yeah.
dark out
Yeah,
there.
I didn't mind it. It was great. How are you being, Kendra?
I am so good. And like you were saying, I've already had half of my day. I've had a busy morning with the kids, the dog at the groomer. I got to have a little time for myself with the coffee at the breakfast place here in town in a foreign country and all the different things. But I would say, if I could use a couple words to describe, I would say I feel very like a balanced energy. And I've been really focusing on this, and I think it's perfect. And a lot of it has been created this space because of gratitude, of, being thankful for all the little things I have, even when it's crazy. And so balanced energy is kind of how I'm being in this moment. And I love that. And I challenge all of you just to take a moment and even pause the podcast and ask yourself how you're being in this moment, not how you're doing, because that's a question you get asked often, but really, how are you being? And then being okay with whatever it is and get in line with that and check in with that. And I know that this episode is going to really, really just call to your heart and help you with whatever moment you're being right now.
Totally. And even if it's not a positive thing, like you can be whatever you're feeling and also experience gratitude with it. I think that's the number one thing that I support parents and kids in is allowing themselves to feel whatever they're feeling and take a breath with it and not minimize it. A
Yeah.
lot of
And you're going to
sensitive
have
kids,
this
yeah. Yeah.
pendulum of feelings, and it's okay to be on either side. It's just being in recognition where you're at and then getting back into that balance and that homeostasis for sure.
Yeah. So I'll share some like nitty gritty theory at the end because we have our times where we each share some of our own magic around the topic. But I just want to share a really basic concept and then jump into the story of where this just was totally thrown at us last weekend when we were chatting. So
Yep.
the basis of victim mentality is that there's a triangle called the drama triangle. This was created by Stephen Karpman, and it's kind of unhealthy relationship dynamics that we put ourselves into. Most of us do a lot of the time if we don't bring greater consciousness to relationship. And it looks like one person becomes the perpetrator, one becomes the victim, and one becomes the savior. And it can happen with two people, and we just kind of dance around the triangle. But the example that we'll share is where I put myself into victim, and then I turned Kendall, my husband, into perpetrator. And it's kind of funny because he's like the last person who would be a perpetrator, but I made him that in the situation. And there's even kind, open-hearted, nice, conscious people do this all the time in subtle ways. It's like, oh, something's wrong with me. It's your fault. A mom I was talking to yesterday was just saying when sometimes when something happens to her son, it's like his parents' fault. It's like, he falls over and it's his parents' fault.
Mm-hmm.
We do this all the time.
Oh, I'm guilty of this as well, very much. Like as I'm becoming aware of exactly what you're saying, the same thing with my husband, I do as well when there's certain things happening and so honest over here, I feel the same way you do.
And I think the one a lot of sensitive, empathetic people are guilty of is becoming the savior or the caretaker. Like
Mm-hmm.
we feel like it's for the people around us, like we're just helping and this is our role, when in fact it might be more supportive just to be a witness or be by their side or hold space for the difficulty, not to come in and fix, because then they become victim and then they get disconnected from this sense of everything's actually okay and they have it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So you made Kendall the perpetrator in this
Okay.
story.
So
It's so
basically,
funny.
yeah, basically what happened last Sunday, we're going through some physiological changes. Like we're going through a detox for some autoimmune issues that I've had for a long time. And so I'm just giving myself some credit that I'm going through some stuff. Here's my victim coming in. But cause I'm like, it was
But
pretty
you're
extreme
human too.
behavior. And Kendra and I had a meeting really not even that early, but on a Sunday morning to talk about the podcast. And I had one of those nights where I just literally couldn't sleep. And I went into chaos. Like, it wasn't like, sometimes I'm like, okay, I got this. Let's just make it through my night. I went into chaos. I went into victim mentality. I decided that it was Kendall's fault I couldn't sleep because it's like so silly. Like, it's such a privileged problem, but in my system, it felt real. It was like a real problem. I was like, it's because, yeah, there's all these reasons why it was his fault. And um I feel like I'm getting a little better at this because I sent him, at some point we should literally send the screenshot. I wouldn't even care. Like, I just want other people to know they're not alone in absurdity. But I sent Kendall literally 20 texts with all these reasons why I was upset, and I felt like I wasn't regulated because of him. And I actually went back on the WhatsApp app and deleted them. And then I sent Kendra a screenshot saying,
Message deleted, message deleted,
message, like,
message deleted.
yeah, it was just like, here's where I was last night, blaming your brother for my own lack of ability to settle into sleep. Um, and then it gets better. You could tell from your side what happened after that with,
Well, first, I just want to acknowledge like the beauty of awareness, because it happens even
yeah,
when you're trying not to. Like, it's easy to fall into that, but for you to like catch it and, get back. And there was probably healing in you sending the message initially to get it off your chest and say what you want to say, and then deleting it, for the bigger purpose of it all too. But yeah, when we jumped on the call and she was like kind of scattered, all over the place. And then very quickly, well, because your ear was hurting as well.
I have a ear infection, which I haven't had since I was little. So it's bringing up some stuff.
Yeah. And so I'm going through an essential emotions coaching course. And so right away I was like, and I'm like, let's think about, I know our bodies are brilliant and they're always speaking to us. So I'm like, there has to be something that's like, so I pull up my book about ear infections. And the first thing that came up was victim mentality. And
Literally
we were
victim
like,
mentality. You were like,
yeah,
oh, ear infection relates to victim mentality. Something's moving through.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
your
I
body
think,
was just telling you that.
yeah. And I think I needed that too, because it's been amazing the past couple of weeks using Kendra's oil prescription. It's really moved through, but it was just kind of a funny unfolding of, we're in this topic, and then here's a situation where it really comes to the forefront. I'll talk later about how you bring in the opposite of the victim mentality, but I think Kendall played a big role in that, because early on in our relationship, I might fall into that, and then he would try to fix or save, and he was offering support, but he really didn't feed into it. He's
Yeah.
like, the shift to it is that he doesn't totally respond other than with like, some gentle support. But he did come upstairs with clove oil, and while we were talking and saying, would this help? And Kendra had said, no, I don't think that's what you need for an ear infection.
Yeah.
But then when you looked in the book, it was like victim mentality, ear infection, clove oil.
Yes. So like physically, I know the oils to use for ear infection, tea tree and basil and lavender. But then I didn't know this after my 10 years of using essential oils, that the oil that will help with victim mentality was clove. But Kendall had this intuitive mind to do that and to bring it up there. And I'm like, that is so cool. Yeah. And, he's an amazing brother. And I think he is such a great person. And so it was really cool to see him. You're right. He wasn't like enabling you in that, but he was still had this like soft supportive side where he wasn't like shutting you off either. And I think that's huge, is like recognizing where you're at in the triangle, but holding space for that, but being present in that part of the triangle while you move through it especially with a partner, whether that's like a spouse, or if it's a friend or a family member. And I think that's just such an important thing to wrap around. And I think one thing I really wanted to mention too, with the gratitude side of it, is like, you're right. Like I think gratitude is so easy to do when things are going great and it's rainbows and sunshine and it's the perfect day, but having gratitude and finding it and being aware of it in those moments on the hard days is the hardest, but it brings the most fruitful, I think, things out of gratitude on the hard times. So just really setting yourself in this attitude of gratitude. And then, like you mentioned, just with your victim mentality, when we were chatting earlier, it can very easily be, you start doing it and you're on a good roll and then you forget about it or it falls off. And like, it's a daily thing, right? To check in with gratitude, to check in on that triangle and not get in the victim mentality type of thing as well.
Yeah. And we're really also talking about presence. Like gratitude just brings you to this moment, whereas anxiety really takes you to the future and depression really takes you to the past. And so much
Yeah.
of us live in those spaces. Like for me, it's more forward thinking. Like I live in 3 days from now instead of today.
Mm-hmm.
What about for you? Do you get stuck more like what should have been or could have been or what will be, or yeah, what's your spectrum?
Very much in the past, and just from
Okay.
traumatic things that have happened in like relationships and situations. But I'm aware of it, right? And I also very much don't want the past to affect my future because I'm so stuck in it, in that, so it's meeting it where it's at and recognizing that it's okay to have those feelings, because I did have things that happened that were difficult, but also not letting it move forward past
Yeah.
that to be hard.
That's so interesting though. So like if you're in a difficult relationship moment, something that might be driving your discomfort is something bad that happened like 5 or 10 years ago. Is that,
Literally.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's just like not how I orient. For me, if I'm in a moment with Kendall, it's more like fear that something will or won't happen 5 years from now.
In the future.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
like it's more this like anxious, like not trusting for what will happen in the
Mm-hmm.
future. And so none of it's wrong. I just think it also just for me illuminates that none of it's really true for
Right.
what's
Yeah.
happening in this moment. It's story in the future and the past.
And I think we put so much emphasis on like when you worry about things, more harm is from you worrying than what's probably going to happen from that situation in the first place. So like
Yeah.
staying grounded in that, I think is really important. And when it comes to gratitude, I'm trying to tie it all together with the past and the future and just being in the moment, like the silly littlest things. Like I have 3 sons, right? And my 4-year-old the other day, as I'm practicing this gratitude, it's so funny what it's doing to my heart and how it's softening my heart. But he wet the bed, and I would never get mad at him or scold him, but I would very much like play the mom of like, oh, and I have to wash the sheets again. And this is taking time out of my day. And it smells like pee in here. That would be something I would typically fall into as a mom that's busy and, not okay. But the other day when it happened, I just looked at him, and part of this was you helping me and looking at him in a space of just, I'm in awe of how cute he is, and it's
He's,
okay. And he won't always be here to pee the bed at my house, and it's okay. And it was an
yeah.
accident. He didn't do it on purpose. And so like that kind of gratitude, it's in so many spectrums, right? The word gratitude. And I'm sure everyone listening has it in different ways too. But man, I was just like, man. And I also have been very much changing my mindset on housework. So now that we're back into Spain and I'm not around family, I don't have all this help from my grandma and my mom with dishes and laundry. I was very overwhelmed with a lot of it. And I have been very much focusing on and changing the narrative around it, as like, instead of it being like, there's so much to do and there's so many dirty clothes and so much dishes from all the meals, it's like, wow, I have children that are healthy and are able to run and play and get dirty, and I get to wash their clothes. And I have, the means financially from my husband's job and my own to be able to provide food on the table that I get to cook because I'm healthy and able. And like, I have arms, I can actually cook a meal for my family. So sometimes I find myself doing dishes and I'm just like, like I get to do dishes because I have arms and I'm healthy. And I'm like, it's so silly, but it changes your whole day. It changes your whole life when you look at it that way.
Totally. And I just keep saying this because it's so true. It really requires presence and being with the senses. Like if you're washing the
Mhm.
dishes and you're in your head, generally you'll make a relationship with the environment that just means it's wrong or it's not right or it could be different. But if you're really there, it never really feels wrong.
No,
Um,
I agree.
yeah. So it's about the relationship that we have with our reality, not the reality. And so
Hmm.
I think what we're proposing is almost like a dare to what if you took more moments of the day today than not and asked yourself, like, what's the benefit of this moment?
Hmm.
Like, how can I be so grateful for this moment? And then how does that feel in my body to soften instead of coming at this moment like there's something wrong with it? It's almost like
And
we're like
every moment
attacking the
has both.
moment. Yeah.
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 Every moment, depending on the perspective that you bring to it, it could be hard and crazy and whatever, but there's beauty in every little moment if you find it. And I think it's a really big thing. And I think if we could have like the model for this episode is being present in the attitude of gratitude, because presence is such a key part of that. You're right.
Yeah.
But I'm curious with your knowledge and background, what do you suggest, or what is your mindset around gratitude
Yeah.
with your
So
business?
coming into more of a theory concept
Mm-hmm.
thingy, um, I want to bring two parts. The first is just, we talked about nervous system regulation in the last episode, and the same teacher, Lisa Dion, that taught me that understanding of the nervous system, she would drive home all the time that the fastest way to come back to rest and digest is gratitude. She would say,
Mm-hmm.
just name 5 things that you're grateful for. She would be talking to a group of like heady therapists that like weren't even in this more, because it can be kind of cliche or spiritual, but I want to propose that it's not. She would just say, like, come back to gratitude and you can feel a shift in your physiological system. So I
Oh
think
my
that's
gosh.
really
Yeah.
important. And then I just want to loop back to the triangle. The model also offers the opposite of those roles. So the offering is, instead of the victim, you become the observer. So instead of, I can't sleep and my life is so hard and there must be something wrong with me and it's Kendall's fault, it's like, oh, I'm not sleeping right now. It's 3 a.m. and I'm just sitting here. And you just sort of become the more neutral observer.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the savior, you become the coach. So instead of Kendall saying, I'm sorry, I love you, like it's my fault, he's like, I think you got this. Would you like some clove oil? Like, it's like, it's like, I think you've got it. And then the persecutor doesn't have an opposite, but I made one up when I was talking to a client recently, because we were talking about how we can both become this through judgments, like through feel like judging someone. And then in a way, it's just as nasty as abusing them. Like if you're in that kind of like judgment, and the opposite is taking radical self-responsibility. So it's like, I am a self-responsible human and it's my job to be in a place of openness, not making someone else feel judged or emotionally abused in that way.
I love it. I love that there is the opportunity to have the other side of it and just being open. And maybe that's something on our Instagrams that we'll dive into and actually lay out to explain more in depth too.
Totally.
Love it.
Kendra, for you, what oil can we use and how can we relate to it in order to open our hearts to more of this present moment gratitude?
Well, my favorite part is the oils. So,
Mm.
and there's so many, but I really try to intuitively, after 10 years of doing this, I intuitively kind of reached to some. And the one that I picked was Harvest Spice. And Harvest Spice is like a limited time one. You can't always get it. It's a gathering blend. It's kind of a fall blend. It's a mix of, it smells like fall and Christmas, right? It's a mix of cinnamon, cassia, clove, eucalyptus, cedarwood, and nutmeg. So if you can imagine this aromatic in your nose of just this really, you walk into a home and it smells like, when it's cold and chilly and winter and the blankets, and it just is very like homey. And so when I open up in my emotional book, which I'm working through my essential emotions coaching course, and this is one part of the oils that there's so many physical benefits like Sophie experienced, but on the emotional side, it's so powerful to have Mother Nature's medicine cabinet. And so I wanted to read a quick sentence here about Harvest Spice, which is the oil of belonging. It says, Harvest Spice fosters the warmth of togetherness and deepens the joy of belonging. Its spicy heat raises the vibration of any space and creates a cozy, welcoming, and reassuring atmosphere. This blend fosters greater gratitude for people who add richness, kindness, interest, or love to one's life. And it reminds individuals not to take for granted the blessing of community, family, and tribe. And so it's just that, being present in the moment of the good in your life. And there is a lot of good when you just focus into that. And so love Harvest Spice. I'm diffusing it right now. It's such a spicy, warm, it kind of warms your heart right up. And so it might not be a typical one that you guys have heard of or know, like lavender or peppermint, but it's a blend that is very, very belonging and gathering for that gratitude heart.
Yay. I love it.
Love it.
And we'll talk soon about how to find us. And, but I just want to say about the oils, I'm someone who grew up with like more Western medicine approaches. Like I have an ear infection and I had made an appointment before I talked to Kendra to go get antibiotics. Like I was just like, well, I have to clear it out or I'm going to die. It's going to be bad. And it's been such a gift to be welcomed into some more natural ways of of healing certain issues, like almost anything that comes up, I can look it up or talk to Kendra. And so, yeah, I'm lucky to have a lot of these oils on hand,
Thank
thanks to
you.
the Bamforth and Showerman family. And we'll talk more about like how to access them and why and what, but
Of course.
um,
I want to one real quick, just have a moment of gratitude for you as my sister too. And I
mm,
just recently started your course that I'm going through with the highly sensitive child. And it has been so powerful for myself as a mother, but also just myself as an individual. And I think you have this brilliant way of bringing things together and just making us as humans make sense, if that's even a word, to kind of like pull it all together. And so I have so much gratitude in this moment, in this episode, for you as my sister and all of your knowledge and all your gifts that you are given here on earth.
thank you. It's
You're
amazing
welcome.
to be like, to be able to really receive from each other. Cause I've had
Mhm.
other sister figures in my life where I'm like, I don't care. I don't want your thing. Like I've just been in a less open moment.
Mhm.
And I love that we're in this moment right now, like really humbled by motherhood and marriage and life and things. And I think with that humility, there can just be an opening towards other people's gifts. It's like,
Yeah.
I need help with my ear infection and I need it right now. Like, and I don't want it to rip up my microbiome. So with antibiotics.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think
So
that's one thing I mean, full circle, you guys, I think when you can be present in that, in the whatever hood you're in, sisterhood, motherhood, womanhood in general, and just being humble in that and realizing that others' successes are not your failures. Like other women's success is not your failure. And everyone has their own purpose. And it's like, I get to play my role in my essential oil world and she gets to play her role. And every single one of you listening has a purpose and has a role. And so step into that and own it and really, really lead with gratitude in that space that you're given to.
yeah, it'll be really cool when we're at a point where we can bring other community members in to share
Absolutely.
their gifts and see what happens with that
We
magic.
will, for sure.
Um, so let's close with our ending. Kendra, how can you lead with your heart in family and purpose even more over the next week?
My word this week, thanks to this episode, is going to be presence and just being present in those little moments, the busy moments in the morning before school, and just presence. Because I couldn't agree more that presence really directly relates to the gratitude that I'm already working on, but having different areas to get into that gratitude moment, I think is really important. So presence would be for me. And what about for yourself?
For me, it's trust. Like when I'm in trust of myself and others and my life, I step out of the future thinking fear and I come more into this moment where I can actually enjoy. And
Mhm.
oh, and we didn't even touch on, without the presence and the gratitude, there isn't much access to joy and pleasure.
Oh, for
So
sure.
maybe with that, it's a whole other episode, but maybe with that, it's like trusting so that I can be in joy and pleasure in this moment, trying my
Absolutely.
best at least. And lots of loving thoughts when I veer off
Yep.
from the center.
Love it. Thank you
Yay.
all for being here. We love you all or appreciate, like, we love having this community. It's helpful for us as well, even though we're just sitting here talking to a computer to each other. I know that I feel it like worldwide that we have a big ripple effect to pass on all of this love and gratitude and energy to all of you as well.
That's it. We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.